Election Tribunal begins as Atiku Abubakar and the PDP are asking the court to annul the election. We saw the re-election of President Muhammadu Buhari. And the leadership tussle for the 9th National Assembly is causing some ripples within the APC as some candidates for some of the offices frown at endorsement of Senator Hamdan Lawan, and horse trading takes a higher intensity. Hello everyone and welcome to the program. This is Politics Today live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Kimaloe in Lagos. We kick off tonight's program with the start of the Presidential Elections Tribunal with the election filed by the People's Democratic Party PDP and its presidential candidate Alhaji Atiku Abubakar against the re-election of President Muhammadu Buhari. This is because the Election Tribunal has granted leave to the PDP and its presidential candidate to serve the president and his party, the All Progressives Congress APC. Their petition by substituted means the PDP and Atiku are challenging the declaration of President Buhari as a winner of the February 23rd, 2019 presidential election, claiming that they won the election by over 1.6 million votes, listed as defendants in the case of INEC, President Buhari and his party, the APC. There's some legal fireworks brewing up there. Well, let's talk yet about another legal fireworks in the works. It is in the case of Zamfara State and the judgment of the appeal court sitting in Sokoto State on Monday. Justice Tom Yakubu of the Sokoto Division of the Court of Appeal set aside the decision of the Zamfara State High Court, which allowed the APC to field a candidate for the governorship election in the state. Governor Abdulaziz Yari says he's approaching the Supreme Court to interpret the judgment of the Court of Appeal, which nullified the primaries by the All Progressives Congress APC in Zamfara State for the 2019 general elections. Take a listen to Governor Yari now.
Some elections has been taking place and some they have given some numbers by the default. But what is there, they requested that they are not given fair hearing because one of their counter claim was not allowed to be taken in the court, where the court says by that they want to, they set aside until that is listened, but they not give order for the higher court to listen to such counter claim. So I think it's better for us to come to Supreme Court so the Supreme Court can be able to explain what the judgment is all about. But in the entire judgment, there's no order of instructive or directive what to be done or not to be done.
Well, let's look at what this all means together. Some perspectives. It's some kind of legal impasse and confusion in Zamfara State and some part of the country. In fact, the governor said there needs to be some interpretation. Let's get some interpretation, shall we? I have joining me here in the studio, Mr. Jiti Ogunye. He's one of those who run to when we have this kind of dilemma on our hands, especially legal ones. Good evening and welcome to the program. Let's get a look at what these all means together, Mr. Ogunye. If you look at it, this is what the man there who won the election at that moment, Senator Kabiru Mavarafa, one of those who are not happy about what has happened in the primaries in the APC, because it's more or less an internal crisis of the APC. So Governor Yari here, and this man, they're at loggerheads. They're not agreeing. This man is right in the middle now because he won the election, but he's looking all not. He's looking gloomy. Let's look at what they had, how the election panned out. Look at it. He won with 534,541 votes, a distant 189,000. That's what the PDP candidate got. But it all looks like all of that is going to be scuttled. What is the situation now? Clear for us. When someone wins the election and the court is saying the election, the primaries that brought you as a candidate of the party is fraudulent or is null and void. What does it mean?
Well, thank you, Sean. You know, Zamfara for a long time has been in the news for the wrong reasons. The state is at the mercy of an unremitting banditry. And now you then have this kind of legal logjam, as you characterize it. Yes, it could be a legal logjam, it could be a legal puzzle, it could be a legal dilemma, but there is no legal puzzle that the law itself also can resolve ultimately. So one way or the other, let's accept upfront that this will be resolved ultimately by the law. But it also has a political side, as you said, because the court would not on its own adjudicate on a matter without a matter or dispute being submitted to it by a party. And so for the partisans in Zamfara State, maybe it's not too late for them to still come together and resolve their differences in their party. However,
are you saying this could be resolved? It's beyond political resolution now.
I'm not implying that, because they've triggered the jurisdiction of the court at the high court level, at the appellate level, and you could hear the governor talking about having a resolution eventually in the Supreme Court. But what this means is simply this. There was an election that took place on the basis of the conduct of a primary of the APC as a party, the governorship primary, which the court has now found was faulty, and on that basis the court is saying that that candidate didn't emerge lawfully, and that indeed, in the eye of the law, he was not a candidate. So what was the implication of this judgment? It was a pre-election matter which has now crept into a post-election phase, where you should be talking about having election petition proper. But this is not an election petition. This is a pre-election matter, and it may yet go to the apex court, the Supreme Court. But the implication of this simply is that we now have a conundrum. And what was the conundrum here? The person that the electorate had invested their electoral will in and elected as a governor has now been declared not to have emerged from a legally acceptable primary, meaning that you can't put something on nothing and expect it to stand. So if he was not qualified to contest the election at the time he contested the election, therefore that meant he couldn't have been elected. So does that then mean that if that decision is sustained up to the apex court, the person who scored next to him, meaning Matawale, the PDP candidate, can now appropriate this calamity, in a positive manner, and then say, look, declare me as the person that has won the election? No, not so fast.
So
why?
It may not be, that may not happen.
It won't happen, because the law says that cannot happen. The likelihood is that we will be looking at a fresh election. Why? Section 138 of the Electoral Act has 4 grounds for nullifying an election. The first is that the person whose election is being contested was not qualified at the time the election was held. The second is that the election was characterized by malpractices and non-compliance with the provisions of the Electoral Act. The third is that the person who was elected, the respondent in a petition, typical petition, was not duly elected by a majority of lawful votes cast in the election. And the fourth is that the petitioner was validly nominated but was unlawfully excluded. That's on the ground of unlawful exclusion. So if you stick to 138A, which is that the person who claims he's been elected was at the time of the election not qualified, since the court has now stated that he's not qualified, and if that decision is sustained to the apex court, that would mean that he wasn't qualified to contest the election, having not emerged from a primary that was recognized by law, right? So that grant can then be a grant for nullifying the election proper at a tribunal. However, Section 140, subsection 2, declares that in the event that the tribunal should rule, if such a petition is brought, that the person who was elected was not elected properly because he was not qualified at the time of contesting the election, the tribunal cannot declare the person who scores to him, who scores next to him,
they run out.
No.
Wow.
The tribunal will only order for a fresh election.
Closest thing now is a fresh election.
It's a fresh election.
Wow. That's a double jeopardy, isn't
and
it?
that implicates, because this is still going on up to the apex court as threatened by Governor Yari, it implicates the possibility of a vacuum post-May 29 if the matter is not quickly resolved. Exactly. That's what it's going to be.
Let's talk about another, because what I was thinking in my head is maybe a situation where the party will say, we won this election, and so after we resolve it, it's still our mandate, and we give it to whoever emerges. But that's a discussion for another day.
It's not so fast.